My problem with bats. Okay, I should warn you right now, this is going to be a great deal of mildly incoherent rambling, so if you haven't already clicked away, please bear with me. For starters, I should express why I feel the need to make this video. It comes from feeling in the minority. This episode is far from the worst in the series. That being said, I bloody hate it! And I just cannot get myself to love and tolerate its message. Now you may be asking yourself why this episode specifically, and not some other installments that are worse. Well, it's simple, my dear Watsons. Most of the other bad episodes are acknowledged as bad. I can sit here and bitch and moan about how Spike at Your Service is bad, but yeah, I don't think too many people are going to disagree, and even more, I don't think there's anything that I can say that hasn't already been said. So in a way, the reason why I must express my dislike for this episode is because most of the community adored it, and I don't understand. Why? Why do you like this episode? Why? The reason I hate it with a fiery passion is because I have a very personal connection to the subject matter. Because it hits very close to home. Because they muddled up the whole ideology just so they can make a stupid Danny Elfman parody. I'm okay. Confused yet? Good. Alright, I'll try to pick up the pieces. This has been a long time coming, and the reason I took so long is I was afraid I wasn't addressing the episode objectively. But screw it. This is entirely subjective. And this is the part where I mentioned that if you like this episode, you are perfectly entitled to your completely valid opinion. Just don't expect any high fives from me about it. But sweetie, you might be asking, what could you possibly not like about this bastion of an episode? You mentioned Danny earlier. Do you not like the song? I'm not a huge fan of the song. In fact, I think it's easily one of the worst ones in the show. Unless we count...
Oh, we're the Wonderbolts and we're super fast and we're from Cloudsdale, which is a part of Equestria.
But let's say we don't. It's an alright song, but let Danny Elfman do Danny Elfman, okay? But no, the song plays a very small role in why this episode sucks. Isn't my favorite. So then what is my issue? Poor adaptation of agriculture and the animal rights versus animal welfare debate. This is why I consider it a bit personal. I only recall seeing one video that addressed the points I'm about to address, and it was from an unknown pair of sisters who have since disappeared by now, and I looked. But even those who didn't like the episode as much as others focused on points that frankly I don't care about nearly as much. But how animals are treated in relation to agriculture is very much something I do care about, and the staff addressed the issue poorly that they clearly didn't give it any thought or were bought off by PETA. Okay, look. There has always been a debate between animal rights and animal welfare. This is the debate between bleeding hearts and empty heads versus mechanical minds and stone hearts, respectively. Well, let's take an example. Let's say you have a dog who is very sick and needs an operation, but the operation is expensive and you cannot practically afford it. So what should you do? According to this episode, if you don't sell every possession you have and live in destitution so your dog can live a couple more years, you are a heartless, selfish person who needs to be purged from the earth. But that's not the reality. The reality of the situation is that neither decision is right or easy. Whichever decision you make, there will be both positive and negative consequences. Still not seeing how this pertains to the episode? Well, let's take a look at the argument both sides make and point out the strengths and weaknesses in them. Point 1. The vampire fruit bats are competing for food with the ponies and seem to attack orchards in a locust kind of speed and severity and do not stay in the west orchard with the other fruit bats. It is unclear how hyperbolic Applejack is being when she alludes to them as functioning like locusts. However, given that their presence in the past led to a plague-like situation, it is a situation any farmer would be worried about and want to do something to prevent. The show wants us to take an all-expense-paid guilt trip for thinking it, but the vampire fruit bats are basically pests. Don't believe me? Just wait, it gets better. Point 2. Fluttershy fails at her job. Again. Literally, the first suggestion brought up for this problem is for Fluttershy to reason with them, to which Applejack immediately agrees. Unfortunately, Fluttershy does not know their language very well, so cannot completely confirm if they will behave or not. This is not enough to quell Applejack's fears, so she wants to take action. Admittedly, slightly hasty on Applejack's part, she should have at least waited to see the results before functioning on the assumption that didn't work. Point 3. Vampire fruit bats take care of their young. Yeah, most animals do. It's called preservation of the species. Honestly, I do not see how this point is relevant at all as to how the situation should be handled except to try to guilt you through parallels. Point 4. By sucking the juice out of the apples and spitting out the seeds, they are making them grow stronger faster. This is a bold-faced lie. The way apples are supposed to function is that they pass through the digestive system of an animal, so the seeds are left in the stool of the animal so that they can enter the soil and grow possibly very far from their parent tree so that they're not competing for the same resources. By spitting them on the ground right under the parent plant without planting them or giving them nutrition, they are depriving the seeds of the ability to become adult trees at all. This is Plant Science 101, people. You learned this shit on Bill Nye, for heaven's sakes.
Isn't that wild?
No, really. Look it up. Netflix. Right now. Episode 11, Plants. See how far Fluttershy's trees grow stronger, faster theory holds up.
That just makes no sense. I mean, it's just bull. Oh my.
And here's another problem. Since when did the Bat Whisperer become an expert in plant science? Clearly never, since she doesn't know what the hell she's talking about. But she feels that if she says it while appealing to people's guilt, they won't bother to actually check the facts. Still think the writers weren't bribed by PETA?
Drop it. Yeah.
Point 5. Fluttershy brings up that they should give the vampire fruit bats part of the orchard. It was already brought up earlier that these fruit bats do not abide by the same rules as the other fruit bats, and Fluttershy has had a difficulty communicating with them. However, because it's Applejack's job to be the heartless bad guy today, she forgets all of these very valid points and just says it'll take too long. On the flip side, nobody points out, and never is it suggested, that Fluttershy's sanctuary could be built simultaneously to driving them away. Have Fluttershy and a couple of the others work on the sanctuary while everyone else drives them out or even towards the sanctuary. But no! Clearly animal rights activists can't work in cooperation and compromise with animal welfare activists. That would make too much sense! Point 6. Now at the beginning of this episode, Applejack is talking about rounding them up, or driving them away, a relatively humane way to deal with pests. Oh, by the way, if you're still held up on the term pests, it is made clear that they compete for the same food with no real benefit to the ponies. I'd call that a pest. In fact, if you're wondering about how she's dealing with these pests, you should see how organic farmers deal with slugs. Ironically, the first one to bring up an alternative method was Twilight, also someone who has no idea what it takes to run an orchard or take care of animals. And what's her idea? Forcibly starve them to death. What the heck, Twilight? This is why outside sources should not be brought in to determine how solutions in industries they do not understand should be set. This episode should have been about compromise, animal rights and animal welfare working together to reach the best possible outcome and acknowledge that both sides have their strengths and their weaknesses. But Applejack is 100% wrong and Fluttershy is 100% right. Give gorillas the vote, people! Don't forget that methods used to prevent animals from hurting themselves or others is wrong because it's limiting the animal's right to hurt others and themselves. Ugh, done. Have fun with your PETA agenda nonsense as long as it's set to the tune of a Danny Elfman parody and it has a cute vampire. And that is my problem with bats.